1. I wasn't supposed to see him again. Not after that night. I erased from my life like it never happened. But there he was, standing in the doorway of my bakery at exactly 7:03 a.m., like he had always belonged there, like he had never left. The bell above the door barely made a sound, but every instinct in my body went on edge anyway, like something deep inside me recognized him before my mind could catch up. He didn't look around like normal customers did, didn't glance at the menu or the pastry case, just walked straight toward the counter with that same slow, controlled confidence that made the air feel heavier, harder to breathe. I kept my hands busy, wiping down the counter that was already clean, pretending I didn't notice the way my pulse started racing, pretending I didn't remember the warmth of his hand, the low voice, the way everything had spiraled out of control in a single night I couldn't afford to think about. "You open early," he said, his voice low and steady, like he was commenting on the weather, but there was something underneath it, something that made my stomach tighten. 5 a.m. I replied without looking up, keeping my tone neutral, normal, like he was just another customer and not the most dangerous man I had ever crossed paths with. "What can I get you?" There was a pause, longer than it should have been, and I felt it more than heard it, like the space between us had shifted. "Coffee," he said finally. "Black." Of course. I didn't ask his name. I didn't need to. People like him didn't need introductions. I grabbed a cup, poured the coffee, slid it across the counter, careful not to touch him, careful not to give anything away. But he didn't take it right away. Instead, his fingers rested on the edge of the counter, just inches from mine, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. "You've been here long?" he asked. "A few months. You're new to this area." It wasn't a question. I forced a small shrug. "People move." He let out a quiet hum, like he didn't quite believe me, like he was filing that answer away for later. Then finally, he picked up the coffee, but instead of stepping back, he stayed right there, close enough that I could feel the heat coming off him, close enough that my senses started to blur in a way I didn't understand. I told myself to step back, to create distance, but my body didn't listen. It never did around him. "You seem familiar," he said, and my heart dropped so fast it almost hurt. I forced a small, polite smile. "I get that a lot." It was a lie, and I think he knew it. His eyes lingered on my face a second longer than necessary, sharp, searching, like he was trying to pull something out of me that I refused to give. Then, slowly, his gaze dropped, just for a moment, and my entire body went rigid. It was subtle, so subtle no one else would have noticed, but I did. I felt it. That shift, that awareness. My hand instinctively moved, brushing over my stomach like I could hide something that wasn't even visible yet, like I could shield myself from whatever it was he was starting to realize. "What's your name?" he asked. I hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. His eyes snapped back up to mine, catching that hesitation, holding on to it. "Ethan," I said. He repeated it under his breath, like he was testing the sound of it, like it meant something more than it should. "Ethan." There was something about the way he said it that made my chest tighten, like my name didn't belong to me anymore. "Victor," he added after a beat, like it was a courtesy, like I didn't already know. Of course I knew. Everyone knew. Victor Kane didn't need introductions. He took a slow sip of his coffee, never breaking eye contact, and I realized too late that I had stopped pretending to work, stopped moving altogether, like I was caught in something I couldn't escape. "You should be careful," he said quietly. "This city isn't kind to people who don't belong." My throat felt dry. "I mind my own business." "Do you?" he asked, and there it was again, that edge beneath his calm tone, that quiet pressure that made it feel like every answer I gave was being weighed, measured. I nodded, even though it felt like a lie the second I did. Another pause stretched between us, thick and heavy, and then, without warning, his hand moved. It wasn't fast, wasn't aggressive, just deliberate. His fingers brushed against my wrist, barely there, but the moment he touched me, everything in me reacted. My breath caught. My chest tightened. It felt like something inside me had just snapped awake, something I had been trying to keep buried. I pulled back immediately, like I'd been burned, but it was too late. He felt it. I saw it in his eyes. That shift again, but stronger this time. Darker. "Interesting," he murmured. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "What is?" I forced out. He didn't answer right away. Instead, his gaze dropped again, slower this time, more intentional, and when it landed, it stayed. My stomach twisted. "You've been hiding," he said quietly, and the words sent a chill straight through me. "I don't know what you mean." But my voice betrayed me. Too fast. Too tight. He stepped closer, just one step, but it was enough to close the space between us completely. I could feel him now, not just the heat, but something else, something deeper, something that made it hard to think straight. "You do," he said. I shook my head, even as my instincts screamed at me to run, to get out, to put distance between us before it was too late. But my feet wouldn't move. They never did when it came to him. "You've been hiding from me," he corrected softly. My chest tightened. "I don't even know you." A lie. A weak one. And he knew it. I saw it in the way his lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but something close enough to make my stomach drop. "No," he said, voice low, steady, certain. "But I know you." And then, slowly, his hand lifted, hovering just inches away from me, from the one place I was trying so hard to protect, and my breath hitched. He didn't touch me this time. Not yet. He didn't need to. The air between us was already charged, already too much. "Tell me something, Ethan," he murmured, eyes locked onto mine, unreadable and intense all at once. "If I've been looking for something I lost, what do you think happens when I finally find it?" My heart pounded harder, louder, like it was trying to break out of my chest. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because deep down, I already knew. And the worst part was, a part of me had been waiting for this moment too. I should have run the second he stepped closer, but my feet stayed planted behind that counter like they were glued to the floor, like some part of me had already decided this moment was inevitable, and there was no point pretending otherwise. Victor did not rush me, did not grab me, did not force anything, and somehow that made it worse, because the control and the way he moved, the patience, meant he was absolutely certain I was not going anywhere. I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing, trying to act normal, but my body would not cooperate, every sense tuned to him like he was the only thing in the room that mattered. "You are shaking," he said quietly, not accusing, just stating a fact. I forced my hands to grip the edge of the counter tighter. "I am not." His gaze dropped again, slow, deliberate, like he had all the time in the world, and I felt it before I even saw it, that same shift in the air, that same awareness that made my chest tighten. "You are," he repeated, softer this time, and for a second, something almost unfamiliar crossed his expression, not softness exactly, but something less cold than before. I hated that I noticed. I hated that part of me responded to it. "You should leave," I said, finally finding my voice, even if it came out quieter than I wanted. "I have customers." It was a weak excuse. The shop was empty. He glanced over his shoulder briefly, like he was humoring me, then looked back at me with that same steady focus. "Not yet." 2 words, simple, calm, but they landed like a weight in my chest. I shook my head, stepping back this time, finally forcing some distance between us. "I do not know what you think this is, but you are wrong." He watched me carefully, like every word I said was something he was dissecting, taking apart piece by piece. "Am I?" he asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out, because the truth was sitting right there between us, unspoken but impossible to ignore. He took another step forward, closing the gap I had just created, and my back hit the counter before I could move again. "You disappeared," he said, his voice still low, still controlled, but there was something else there now, something tighter, something that sounded almost like frustration. "People do that," I replied quickly. "They leave. It is not a crime." "It is," he said, and this time there was no hesitation at all. "When you take something that is not yours to take." My breath caught. I did not take anything. His eyes flickered, just for a second, and then his hand moved again, slower this time, giving me every chance to pull away, every chance to stop him, but I did not move fast enough, or maybe I did not want to. His fingers brushed lightly against my wrist, then slid up just slightly, enough to send that same sharp reaction through my entire body. I sucked in a breath, unable to stop it, and his gaze sharpened instantly. "There it is," he murmured, almost to himself. I pulled my hand back this time, faster, pressing it against my chest like I could calm the reaction, like I could force my body to stop responding to him. "Stop," I said, and there was a crack in my voice I could not hide. He did not move closer, did not touch me again, but he did not step back either. "You feel it," he said. It was not a question. I shook my head again, even though it was pointless. You are imagining things. I do not imagine, he replied, calm as ever. I confirm. The word sent a chill through me. I glanced toward the door, calculating the distance, wondering if I could make it past him, wondering if it was even worth trying. He noticed. Of course he did. If you were going to run, he said quietly, you would have done it already. I clenched my jaw, hating how right he was. You do not know anything about me. No, he agreed. And for the first time, his voice shifted just slightly, softer, but not weaker, just different. But I know enough. His gaze dropped again, and this time it stayed longer, not just a glance, but a focused, deliberate look that made my stomach twist. Instinctively, my hand moved again, covering, protecting, even though there was nothing to see yet, nothing anyone else would notice. He saw it anyway. That small movement, that instinct, and something in his expression changed. Completely. It was subtle, but I felt it like a shift in the ground beneath my feet. The cold calculation did not disappear, but something else layered over it, something deeper, something that made my pulse spike for a completely different reason. You have been protecting something, he said slowly. I forced a laugh, but it came out strained. I think you should leave. He did not move. You have been hiding, he continued, like I had not spoken at all. My chest tightened. And now you are protecting. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it filled the entire room. I said leave. This time, my voice was sharper, stronger, and for a second, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, not exactly, but recognition. Like he had been waiting for that reaction. Like he preferred it. Say it again, he said quietly. I blinked, thrown off by the request. What? Tell me to leave, he repeated, his voice lower now, almost challenging. And mean it. I stared at him, my thoughts scrambling, my instincts pulling me in two different directions at once. Run. Stay. Fight. Hide. None of it made sense anymore. Leave. I said again, slower this time, forcing the word out, forcing myself to hold his gaze. For a second, nothing happened. He just looked at me, searching, measuring, like he was trying to decide something. Then, finally, he exhaled softly, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. Not yet, he said again. But this time, it sounded different, less like a command, more like a promise. And that was somehow worse. Because promises meant this was not over. Not even close. He stepped back then, just enough to give me space, just enough that I could breathe again, but his eyes never left mine. I will give you time, he added, like he was offering something generous, something I should be grateful for. My stomach twisted. Time for what? I asked before I could stop myself. His lips curved slightly, not a full smile, but enough to make my chest tighten again. To decide, he said, if you are going to tell me the truth, or if I have to find it myself. And something about the way he said it, calm, certain, inevitable, made one thing painfully clear. This was not a question. It never had been. 3. I told myself I would leave the second he walked out that door, that I would close early, pack what I could, and disappear again before he came back, because he would come back. I knew that now with a certainty that made my chest feel tight, but I did not move, not right away. I just stood there behind the counter staring at the empty doorway like if I kept watching it long enough this would all rewind, and I could go back to a version of my life where Victor Kane did not know my name, where he had not looked at me like that, like he had already decided something I had no say in. The coffee machine hummed softly behind me, the only sound in the shop, grounding me just enough to finally move. I exhaled slowly and forced myself into motion, wiping down the counter again, rearranging pastries that did not need rearranging, anything to keep my hands busy so I did not start shaking again. You waited too long. I muttered under my breath, more to myself than anything, because deep down I knew the truth. I had not just been hiding from him. I had been waiting for the moment everything I had tried to bury came back to find me. The bell above the door rang suddenly, and my head snapped up, heart jumping into my throat. But it was just Mrs. Carter from 2 blocks down, smiling like she always did, asking for her usual cinnamon roll and small latte. I forced a smile, doing my best to act normal, taking her order, making small talk, pretending my entire world had not just shifted 10 minutes ago. You look tired, Ethan, she said gently as I handed her the cup. Long night. I hesitated, just for a second, then nodded. Something like that. She gave me a sympathetic smile and left, and the second the door closed behind her, the quiet rushed back in, heavier this time, like it was pressing in on me from all sides. I glanced at the clock. 7:21. He had been here less than 20 minutes, and somehow it felt like everything had changed. I pressed my palm lightly against my stomach, the motion instinctive now, protective, grounding, but it did not help. If anything, it made everything worse, because his words echoed in my head, that calm certainty, that quiet promise that this was not over. I will give you time. Time for what? Time to run. Time to tell him. Time to watch everything fall apart. I shook my head sharply, trying to clear it. No, I was not doing this again. I had already made my choice months ago. I had left. I had built something new. I had a life here, small and quiet in mine. I was not going to let him take that from me. The bell rang again. My stomach dropped. Too soon. There was no way. But when I looked up, it was not Victor. It was a man I did not recognize, tall, wearing a dark jacket, his expression neutral in a way that felt practiced. He stepped inside slowly, his eyes scanning the shop, not like a customer, but like someone taking inventory. Every instinct in me went rigid. "We are open," I said carefully, keeping my tone even, casual, even as something cold settled in my chest. He looked at me then, really looked, and there was a flicker of recognition that made my pulse spike. "Ethan Cole," he said, not asking, just stating it. My fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. "Can I help you?" I replied, ignoring the way he had just said my name like he already knew the answer. He took a few steps closer, slow, deliberate, and stopped a few feet away, leaving just enough distance to seem polite, but not enough to feel safe. "You have been hard to find," he said. My stomach twisted. "I think you have the wrong person." Another lie. He did not react to it. "Mr. Kane does not like waiting," he continued calmly, like we were discussing something normal, like this was just another business conversation. My heart skipped. Too fast. Too soon. I forced myself to stay still. "I do not know who that is." He watched me for a moment, then gave a small nod, like he expected that answer. "You will," he said simply. The air in the room felt heavier again, that same pressure from earlier, even though Victor was not there. "I am just here to make sure you understand something," the man continued. "You can leave if you want. You can try to disappear again, but he will find you." My throat felt dry. "Then why are you here?" I asked before I could stop myself. His expression did not change. "Because he told me not to touch anything." The words were simple, but they landed with a weight that made my chest tighten. Not to touch anything. Not to drag me back. Not to force me. That was not what I expected. "He is giving you a choice," the man added, like he was clarifying something important. I let out a shaky breath, my mind racing. A choice. That was what Victor had said too. But it did not feel like a choice. It felt like a countdown. The man glanced at the door, then back at me. "He will come back," he said. "Soon." My stomach twisted again, tighter this time. "And when he does?" I asked quietly. The man held my gaze for a second longer, then gave a slight shrug. "That depends on you." Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable, and then, just like that, he turned and walked out, the bell above the door ringing softly behind him. I stood there, frozen, staring at the spot where he had been, my heart pounding harder than before. A choice. That was what they both said. But choices only mattered when you actually had control. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something that made my chest tighten in a completely different way. Victor Kane was not forcing me. He was waiting. And somehow that was worse. I should have closed the shop right then, locked the door, turned off the lights, and walked away from everything before it was too late. But instead I stood there staring at the door long after the man left, like I was waiting for it to open again, like I already knew it would. My hands moved on their own, flipping the sign from open to closed even though it was barely past 8 in the morning, even though I had never closed early before. The quiet felt different now, heavier, like the walls were listening. I grabbed my phone from under the counter, my fingers hovering over the screen, trying to decide who to call, if there was even anyone I could call. There was no one. I had made sure of that when I left. Everything behind. Think. I muttered to myself, pacing behind the counter. "You have time." He said you have time. But time did not feel like something I had. It felt like something that was running out faster with every second I stood still. My eyes drifted to the small bag I kept under the counter, the one I had packed months ago, and never unpacked, just in case. I crouched down and pulled it out, unzipping it with shaking hands. Cash, a change of clothes, documents under a different name. I had planned for this. I had told myself I would be ready. So why was I still here? Because Running Mint admitting he had already won. The thought hit harder than I expected, and I froze, staring down at the bag. No, this was not about winning. This was about survival. I stood up quickly, slinging the bag over my shoulder, moving toward the back door. My heart was pounding again, louder now, like it was trying to push me forward, telling me to move before it was too late. I reached for the handle, fingers wrapping around the cold metal, and for a second, everything went still. Then I heard it, the soft click of the front door opening. My entire body locked up. Too late. I turned slowly, already knowing what I was going to see before my eyes confirmed it. Victor stepped inside like he had never left, like this was just the continuation of a conversation we had paused instead of ended. The bell above the door rang softly behind him, and the sound felt final. He glanced at the sign on the door, then back at me, his gaze immediately dropping to the bag slung over my shoulder. "You close early," he said calmly. My grip tightened on the strap. "I am not feeling well." He hummed quietly, like he was considering that, but there was no real doubt in his expression. "You are leaving," he corrected. Not a question. I swallowed, forcing myself to stand my ground even though every instinct was screaming at me to move, to run, to do something. "I have somewhere to be." His eyes lifted to mine again, steady, unreadable. "So do I." The words landed between us, heavier than they should have. He took a step forward, and I took one back without thinking, until my back hit the wall near the back door. No space left. No easy exit. My heart was racing so fast it felt like it might give me away entirely. "You were going to leave without saying anything," he continued, his voice still even, but there was something underneath it now, something tighter, something that made my chest feel like it was being pulled in two directions. "I do not owe you anything." I shot back, sharper than before, because anger was easier than fear, easier than whatever else I was starting to feel. His gaze sharpened slightly, not offended, not surprised, just more focused. "You are right," he said after a beat. "You do not." That was not the answer I expected, and for a second, it threw me off balance. "Then move," I said quickly, gesturing toward the front. "I am leaving." He did not move. Of course he did not. Instead, he glanced at the bag again, then back at me, and something in his expression shifted, not softer, not exactly, but less distant. "You packed this a long time ago," he said. My stomach twisted. "It is none of your business." "Everything about you is my business," he replied calmly, and the certainty in his voice made my pulse spike again. "Stop saying that," I snapped, pushing off the wall just enough to create a few inches of space. "You do not get to decide that." He watched me carefully, like he was memorizing every reaction, every word. "Then tell me what I get to decide," he said. The question hung there, heavier than anything else he had said so far, because it was not a command, not a demand. It was something else, something that made my chest tighten in a completely different way. I opened my mouth, ready to argue, ready to push back, but nothing came out. Because I did not know. I did not know what power he actually had, what control he was choosing not to use. And that scared me more than anything else. Silence stretched between us, thick and tense, and then his gaze dropped again, slower this time, more deliberate, and my breath caught. My hand moved instinctively, pressing against my stomach again, like I could hide something that was already giving me away. His eyes followed the movement, locking onto it, and this time he did not look away. The air shifted. I felt it, deep and immediate, like something had just clicked into place that could not be undone. He took another step closer, not fast, not threatening, just certain, until there was barely any space left between us. I could feel his presence completely now, overwhelming in a way that made it hard to think straight. "You have been protecting something," he said again, softer now, but no less certain. My throat felt tight. "I told you to leave." He did not respond to that. Instead, his hand lifted slowly, giving me every chance to stop him, every chance to move away, but my body betrayed me again, freezing in place as his hand hovered just inches from where mine rested. He did not touch me. Not yet. He just waited, like he was giving me one last choice. "Ethan," he said quietly, and the way he said my name made my chest tighten all over again. Look at me. I did not want to. I knew what I would see if I did. But I did anyway. His eyes met mine, steady, intense. But there was something new there now, something that made my breath catch for a completely different reason. Not just control, not just certainty, something else, something deeper. Tell me the truth, he said. I shook my head immediately. No, the word came out too fast, too desperate. His gaze did not waver. Then I will ask you a different question. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it filled the entire room. What? I managed to say. He did not look away. Not for a second. Why? He said slowly. Are you protecting something that already belongs to me? My breath caught completely this time, like the air had been pulled out of the room. Everything went still. And in that silence, I realized something that made my chest tighten in a way I could not ignore anymore. He was not guessing. He already knew. 5. The words hit me harder than anything else he had said so far. Not loud, not aggressive, but certain in a way that made my chest tighten like I could not get a full breath. He already knew. Not everything, maybe, but enough. Enough to see through every lie I had tried to hold together since the moment he walked back into my life. You are wrong, I said anyway, because I had to, because if I stopped denying it even for a second, everything would unravel too fast for me to keep up. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, but I could see it in his eyes, that small shift that told me he heard what I was not saying just as clearly as what I was. Victor did not argue. He did not push. He just stood there, close enough that I could feel the quiet pressure of his presence, like gravity pulling everything toward him whether I wanted it or not. Then say it again, he said softly. I swallowed. You are wrong. This time, the words came out thinner, weaker, and I hated that he noticed. He always noticed. His gaze dropped again, slow, deliberate, landing exactly where I did not want it to, and my hand tightened instinctively against my stomach like I could block him out, like I could protect something that had already betrayed me just by existing. The silence stretched, heavy and thick, until I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. You left, he said finally, his voice quieter now, not as sharp as before, but somehow more dangerous because of it. You disappeared without a word. I forced a breath in. People leave all the time. Not like that, he replied immediately. Not after. He stopped himself, just for a second, like he was choosing his words carefully, and that hesitation threw me more than anything else. Victor Kane did not hesitate. Not about anything. After what? I challenged, because I needed him to say it, needed him to define it, needed something solid to push against instead of this quiet, suffocating certainty. His eyes lifted back to mine, and for a moment, there was something there I did not expect. Not anger, not control, something sharper, something almost unsettled. After something changes, he said finally. My chest tightened. Because he was right. Everything had changed that night. I just refused to admit it. Nothing changed, I said quickly, shaking my head, pushing back against the thought before it could take root. It was a mistake. That is all. The words felt wrong the second they left my mouth, but I did not take them back. I could not. His expression stilled completely. The air between us shifted again, colder this time, sharper. A mistake, he repeated, his voice low, even, but there was something underneath it now, something tight enough that I felt it before I understood it. I held his gaze, refusing to back down even though my pulse was racing again. Yes. Another silence. Longer this time. He studied me like he was trying to see past the words, past the defenses I had built up, like he was looking for something real underneath all of it. Then, slowly, he exhaled, and something in his posture changed, not weaker, not softer, but different. Then why did you run? He asked quietly. If it meant nothing. The question hit harder than anything else, because I did not have a good answer. Because the truth was too complicated, too dangerous to say out loud. I looked away first, breaking eye contact because I could not hold it anymore without giving something away. I had my reasons. Tell me, he said. Simple. Direct. Like it should be easy. I shook my head immediately. No, he did not push again right away. Instead, he moved, just slightly, closing the distance by another inch, and I felt it instantly. That same pull, that same reaction I could not control no matter how hard I tried. You are still reacting, he said quietly. I clenched my jaw. That does not mean anything. It means everything, he replied, and this time, there was no hesitation at all. I shook my head again, backing up until there was nowhere left to go, my shoulders pressing into the wall, the door just inches behind me. Stop saying that. His gaze softened, just slightly, just enough that it caught me off guard. Why? He asked. Does that scare you so much? I froze. Because it did. More than anything else. Not him. Not the situation. Not even being found. It was this connection I could not explain, this reaction I could not control, this feeling that something between us had shifted in a way I could not undo. I am not scared, I said quickly, even though the words felt hollow. He did not call me out on it. He did not need to. Ethan, he said again, quieter this time, and the way he said my name made my chest tighten all over again, like it meant something more than just a name when it came from him. Look at me. I did not want to, but I did. His eyes held mine, steady, searching, and for the first time since he walked in, I saw it clearly. Not just control, not just certainty, something else, something that looked dangerously close to concern. You are not alone in this, he said. The words caught me off guard so completely that I forgot how to respond for a second. You do not get to decide that, I said finally, but my voice lacked the sharpness it had before. Maybe not, he admitted, and that alone was enough to throw me again, because Victor did not admit things like that. But I am still here. My throat tightened. That does not change anything. It changes everything, he said quietly. And for a second, I believed him. That was the worst part. The most dangerous part. Because if I believed him, even a little, then everything I had built to keep myself safe would start to fall apart. I shook my head again, forcing the thought away, forcing the distance back between us even though we were standing inches apart. You need to leave, I said, more quietly now, but more certain than before. He studied me for a long moment, like he was deciding something again, like he was weighing options I could not see. Then, slowly, he stepped back. The space between us opened up just enough that I could breathe again, but it did not feel like relief. It felt like something else, like the pause before something bigger. I will go, he said. My chest tightened. I did not expect that. For now, he added, and there it was, that certainty again, that quiet promise that none of this was over. He glanced at the bag over my shoulder one more time, then back at me. Do not run, he said. Not a command. Not exactly. But not a suggestion either. My fingers tightened around the strap. Or what? He held my gaze, steady, calm, unreadable. You already know, he said softly. And somehow, that was worse than any threat could have been. 6. I did not move after he left, not right away, just stood there staring at the door like if I waited long enough he might come back again, like part of me was already expecting it. But the shop stayed quiet this time. No footsteps, no shadows crossing the glass, just silence that felt too loud in my ears. My grip on the bag loosened slowly, the tension draining out of my shoulders in a way that did not feel like relief, more like something collapsing. Do not run, I muttered under my breath, repeating his words like I could make sense of them if I said them enough times. It was not a threat. That was the problem. If it had been a threat, I could have ignored it, pushed back, treated it like something external. But this felt different. Like he was asking instead of ordering. And I did not know what to do with that. I dragged a hand through my hair and let out a slow breath, forcing myself to move, to think. The bag was still over my shoulder, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with what was inside it. I had planned for this moment. I had told myself that if he ever found me, I would leave without hesitation. So why was I still standing here? Because leaving did not feel like escape anymore. It felt like running straight into something worse. I shook my head sharply. That is not true, I said out loud, like saying it would make it real. You just leave. That is what you do. But my feet did not move. Not toward the door. Not toward anything. Instead, I found myself walking back to the counter, setting the bag down like I had all the time in the world, like I had not just been seconds away from disappearing again. I leaned against the edge, pressing my palms flat against the surface, trying to steady myself, but my mind would not slow down. His voice kept echoing, calm, certain, impossible to ignore. You are not alone in this. My chest tightened. I am, I said quietly, but the words did not carry the same weight they used to. The bell above the door rang again, sharp enough to make me flinch this time, and my head snapped up immediately, heart jumping, but it was not him. It was Daniel, the guy who owned the hardware store down the street, holding his usual newspaper and looking mildly surprised at The closed sign. Hey, you closing early today? He asked, stepping inside anyway. I forced a quick nod, grabbing onto the normalcy of the interaction like it was something solid. Yeah, not feeling great. He frowned slightly, glancing at me more closely. You look pale, man. You sure you are okay? I hesitated, then nodded again. Just tired. He gave a small shrug, accepting that answer easily. Because why would he not? Because to him, this was just another morning, just another conversation. All right, well, take it easy, he said, setting the paper on the counter. See you tomorrow? The question hit differently than it should have. Tomorrow. Like everything was just going to continue the way it always had. I forced a small smile. Yeah, tomorrow. He nodded and left, the door closing softly behind him. And the second he was gone, the quiet came rushing back again, heavier this time, like it was pressing in around me. Tomorrow. I let out a slow breath, staring down at the counter, at the paper he had left behind, at the simple, ordinary life I had built here piece by piece. Could I really just walk away from it again? Could I really start over somewhere else, knowing it would not matter, knowing he would find me anyway? My hand drifted back to my stomach without me thinking about it. The motion automatic now, grounding, protective, but this time, it brought something else with it. Not just fear, not just instinct, something softer, something I had been trying not to think about at all. You are not alone in this. I closed my eyes briefly, exhaling slowly, because I knew what he meant, even if I did not want to admit it. This was not just about me anymore. It had not been for a while, and that changed everything. I opened my eyes again, staring at the door, at the space where he had been standing just minutes ago. He had stepped back. He had given me space. He had left when I told him to. That was not control. That was something else, and I did not know what to do with that either. I pushed off the counter and grabbed the bag again, slinging it over my shoulder, forcing myself to move this time. You are leaving, I said firmly, like I was reminding myself of the plan, like I could still follow through if I just committed to it. I walked toward the back door, each step heavier than the last, my heartbeat loud in my ears again. But this time, it felt different. Not panic, not urgency, something slower, something that felt like hesitation. I reached the door and stopped, my hand hovering over the handle again, just like before. Just go, I whispered, but I did not move. Because for the first time since all of this started, the question was not just about whether I could run. It was about whether I wanted to. And that was the part that scared me the most. The bell above the front door rang again. My head snapped up instantly, breath catching, and I turned slowly, already knowing before I saw him that it was Victor. He stepped inside like nothing had changed, like he had never left, like this was exactly where he was supposed to be. My heart skipped, then picked up again, faster, stronger, like it was reacting before I could stop it. You are still here, he said quietly. I swallowed, tightening my grip on the bag. So are you. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close enough to make my chest tighten again. I said I would come back. I stared at him, my thoughts racing, my instincts pulling me in every direction at once, but none of them felt right anymore. Why? I asked finally, my voice quieter than before, but steadier too. Why are you doing this? He did not answer right away. Instead, he took a step closer, slow, deliberate, giving me time to react, to move, but I did not. I could not. Because you ran, he said simply. My chest tightened. That is not an answer. It is, he replied, his gaze steady on mine. You ran from something that mattered. My breath caught. You do not know that. I do, he said, and this time, there was no hesitation at all. Silence stretched between us again, thick and heavy, and then he glanced at the bag over my shoulder one more time before looking back at me. If you leave now, he said quietly, you are not just running from me. My stomach twisted. Then what am I running from? He held my gaze, steady, certain, and for the first time, there was something in his expression that felt almost raw. From the truth, he said. And just like that, I knew. I was not ready to leave. Not anymore. 7. The worst part was not that he came back. It was that I had already known he would. Like something inside me had been waiting for that door to open again. And now that he was standing there, calm and certain like always, I could not pretend this was just coincidence anymore. I tightened my grip on the bag over my shoulder, but it felt pointless now, like holding on to something that no longer meant what it used to. Victor took another step forward, slow enough that I could have moved, could have stepped back, could have turned and walked out the back door, but I did none of those things. I stayed. Say it, he said quietly, his voice steady but carrying something heavier underneath. I frowned slightly. Say what? His eyes did not leave mine. That you are not leaving. My chest tightened instantly. I did not say that. No, he agreed calmly. But you are still here. The words hit too close, too direct, and I hated that he was right. I forced a breath in, shaking my head. I just have not left yet. That is not the same thing, he replied, almost gently, and that word, gentle, did not belong to him, not in my mind, not in anything I had known about him before. It is, I insisted, even though my voice lacked the certainty I wanted. He tilted his head slightly, studying me in that same quiet, focused way that made it feel like he could see straight through everything I was trying to hide. Then go, he said. I blinked. What? Go, he repeated, stepping slightly to the side, clearing the path to the back door behind me. Leave. The space opened up, clear, unobstructed, and for a second, everything in me went still. This was what I had wanted, right? A way out. No pressure. No force. No reason to stay. My fingers tightened around the strap of the bag, my heartbeat picking up again, but my feet did not move. Not forward. Not backward. Just stuck. Well, he added quietly after a moment, I am not stopping you. I stared at him, something twisting in my chest that I did not understand. Why are you doing that? Doing what? Making it sound like I have a choice, I said, sharper than I meant to, because it did not feel like a choice. Not really. Not anymore. His gaze softened again, just slightly, but enough that it caught me off guard. Because you do, he said simply. I let out a breath that felt more like frustration than anything else. You keep saying that, but it does not feel like it. He did not respond right away. Instead, he watched me, really watched me, like he was trying to understand something instead of control it. That alone was enough to throw me off balance. Then what does it feel like? He asked. The question landed heavier than it should have. I hesitated, searching for the right words, but everything felt tangled, messy, impossible to sort out. It feels like no matter what I choose, you are still going to be there, I said finally, quieter now, more honest than I had been before. His expression did not change, but something in his eyes shifted, something that looked almost like recognition. Yes, he said. Not defensive, not aggressive, just honest. My chest tightened. That is not a choice. It is, he replied calmly. Because I am not the one deciding what you do next. I let out a small, humorless laugh. You already decided everything else. No, he said, and this time there was a hint of something firmer in his voice. Not force, but conviction. You think I did. That is different. I shook my head, frustration building again, because this conversation was not going where I expected, not following any pattern I understood. You tracked me down. You sent someone to find me. You showed up here like you owned the place. I did not send him to bring you back, he interrupted quietly. I told him not to touch anything. The words echoed what the other man had said earlier, and my stomach twisted again. That does not change anything. It changes everything, he said, his gaze steady on mine. Because if I wanted to force this, you would not still be standing there. Silence hit the room again, heavier this time, because I knew he was right, and I hated that I knew it. I hated that part of me was starting to understand what he was saying, starting to see the difference between control and whatever this was. My hand drifted again, resting lightly against my stomach, and this time, I did not pull it away. I did not hide it. His eyes followed the movement instantly, locking onto it like it was the only thing that mattered. The air shifted again, that same tension, but deeper now, more grounded, less chaotic. You felt it too, he said quietly. It was not a question. I swallowed, my throat suddenly dry. That does not mean anything. It means something, he corrected gently, and that word again, gentle, made my chest tighten in a way I could not explain. I shook my head, even as my hand stayed where it was. You cannot just decide that. I am not deciding, he said. I am recognizing. The difference should not have mattered. But it did, more than I wanted it to. I let out a slow breath, my thoughts racing, trying to find something solid to hold on to, something that made sense. You said I am not alone, I said finally, my voice quieter now. What does that even mean? He did not answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer again, slow, deliberate, giving me time to react, but I did not move this time. I could not. It means, he said carefully, like he was choosing every word, that whatever this is, it did not just affect you. My chest tightened sharply. You do not get to say that. Why? He asked softly. Because it would make it real. The words hit too close, too direct, and I flinched slightly before I could stop myself. He noticed. Of course he did. It is already real, he said. Silence filled the space between us again, but this time, it felt different. Not suffocating. Not overwhelming. Just present. I looked at him, really looked this time, at the way he was standing there, not blocking the door, not forcing me to stay, just there, waiting. My grip on the bag loosened slowly, the weight of it feeling different now, less like an escape and more like something I was not sure I needed anymore. If I stay, I said slowly, the words coming out before I could stop them, what happens next? His gaze did not waver. We find out the truth, he said. Simple, direct, terrifying. My heart pounded again, but not from fear this time. Not entirely. I glanced at the door behind me, then back at him, and for the first time since all of this started, I realized something that changed everything. I was not standing here because I could not leave. I was standing here because I had not chosen to. 8. Then start by telling me the truth, he said. And this time there was no edge in his voice, no pressure, just a quiet certainty that made it harder to resist than anything else he had done so far. I stood there for a second longer, the weight of his words settling in, pressing against everything I had been trying to hold together, and slowly, without really deciding to, I let the bag slip off my shoulder. It hit the floor with a soft thud that felt louder than it should have, like something final. Victor's eyes flickered down to it, then back up to me, and something in his expression shifted again, not victory, not satisfaction, just acknowledgement. That does not mean I am staying, I said quickly, even though the words felt weaker now. It means you are not leaving yet, he corrected calmly. I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair, trying to steady my thoughts, but everything felt too loud, too close, like I was standing at the edge of something I could not step away from anymore. You want the truth, I said finally, my voice quieter than before. You are not going to like it. He did not hesitate. That is not your concern. I let out a small, humorless breath. That sounds like something someone says when they think they are in control. His gaze held mine, steady, unshaken. It sounds like someone who has already considered the alternatives. That answer should not have affected me, but it did. It made something in my chest tighten in a way I could not ignore. I looked away for a moment, gathering my thoughts, trying to figure out where to even start, because there was too much, too many things I had buried, too many reasons I had left. That night, I said slowly, the words feeling heavier the second I spoke them out loud. It was not supposed to happen. Silence followed, but it was not empty. It felt like he was listening in a way that mattered. I was not supposed to be there. I continued, my fingers curling slightly against my palm. I took a shift for someone else. It was just supposed to be one night, one job, and then I would be gone. His gaze did not leave mine, but something in his posture shifted, like he was focusing more closely now. And then I met you, I said, forcing the words out before I could stop myself. My chest tightened. Memories I had been trying to avoid pushing back to the surface whether I wanted them to or not. You were not like anyone else in that place. Everyone else was loud, careless, trying to prove something. You were just there, watching, like you already knew how everything would play out. His expression remained controlled, but there was something in his eyes now, something sharper, more present. And you came to me, he said quietly. I hesitated. I did my job. No, he replied, and there was a quiet certainty in his voice that made my stomach twist. You chose to come closer. I clenched my jaw, looking away again because I did not want to admit that he might be right. It does not matter, I said quickly. It was still a mistake. The word hung between us again, heavier this time. Victor did not react immediately. He just watched me, like he was waiting for something else, something I was not saying yet. I left before morning. I continued, my voice softer now, more distant, like I was replaying it in my head as I spoke. I did not want to stay long enough for it to become something real. His gaze shifted slightly at that, something unreadable flickering beneath the surface. And then you found out, he said. Not a question. I nodded slowly, my hand drifting back to my stomach again without thinking. A few weeks later. The admission settled in the space between us, quiet but heavy enough that it changed everything. He did not move. He did not speak. But I felt it anyway, the shift in the air, the way everything seemed to narrow down to this one moment. "You could have come back," he said finally, his voice lower now, more controlled than before, like he was holding something in place. I let out a breath that felt shaky despite my efforts to stay steady. That was not an option. Why? The question came immediately, direct, and I knew he was not going to let this go. I shook my head slightly. "Because I know what you are." His eyes narrowed just a fraction. "And what is that?" I met his gaze again, forcing myself not to look away this time. "Someone who does not get attached," I said. "Someone who does not build a life around something uncertain." His expression stilled completely. "You decided that for me." "I decided that for myself," I corrected quickly, because I was not going to wait around and see if I mattered. The words came out sharper than I expected, more honest than I had planned, and for a second, the silence that followed felt heavier than anything else we had said so far. Victor did not argue. He did not dismiss it. He just stood there, looking at me like he was seeing something differently now. "So you ran," he said quietly. I nodded once. "Yes. And you never told me." I let out a small breath, my chest tightening again. There was nothing to tell. His gaze dropped again, slower this time, landing where my hand rested, and this time, I did not move it. I did not hide it. I could not. "There is now," he said softly. The words settled deep, heavier than anything else, because they were true in a way I could not deny anymore. I swallowed, my pulse picking up again, not from fear this time, but from something else, something I did not fully understand yet. "This changes things," I said quietly. "It changes everything," he replied, his voice steady, certain. I shook my head slightly, even though I knew arguing it was pointless. "You do not know that." He looked back up at me, his gaze locking onto mine with a focus that made it impossible to look away. "Then tell me what it changes," he said. The question hung there, waiting, demanding an answer I was not sure I was ready to give. I hesitated, my thoughts racing, my heart pounding, because this was the moment everything shifted, the moment I either kept running or finally stopped. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized something that scared me more than anything else. I did not know which one I wanted anymore. 9. "It changes what I do next," I said finally, my voice quieter than I expected, but steady enough that I did not take it back. Victor did not interrupt, did not rush me, just stood there watching, waiting, like he had already decided this moment mattered more than anything else. "Before," I continued slowly, trying to sort through thoughts that still felt tangled. "This was simple. I leave. I disappear. I start over somewhere else." I let out a breath, shaking my head slightly. Now it is not simple anymore. His gaze stayed fixed on me, sharp but not pressing, like he was giving me space to reach the conclusion on my own. "Because of me," he said. Not arrogant. Not claiming. Just acknowledging. I hesitated, then nodded once. "Yes." The word felt heavier than it should have, like it carried more meaning than I was ready to unpack. "And because of this," I added, my hand pressing lightly against my stomach again, not hiding it this time, just recognizing it. His eyes followed the movement instantly, but this time, there was no tension in it, no sharp edge, just focus. "Then say it," he said quietly. I frowned slightly. "Say what?" "What you are protecting," he clarified, his voice steady, but softer than before. My chest tightened. The words sat right there, ready, but saying them out loud felt like crossing a line I could not step back from. "I think you already know," I said instead. "I do," he replied, "but I want to hear you say it." That caught me off guard more than anything else. Not because of what he was asking, but because of how he was asking it. Not demanding, not forcing, just wanting. I swallowed, my pulse picking up again, slower this time, heavier. "It is yours," I said finally, the words coming out quieter than I expected, but clear enough that there was no taking them back. The moment the sentence left my mouth, the entire room seemed to shift. Not physically, but something changed. Something settled. Victor did not move right away. He just stood there, looking at me, like he was processing it, like even he needed a second to let it sink in. Then, slowly, he exhaled, and something in his posture eased, just slightly, just enough that I noticed. "I know," he said. My chest tightened. "You are not surprised." "No," he admitted. "But hearing it," he paused, like he was choosing his words carefully again, which still felt strange coming from him. It makes it real in a different way. I let out a small breath, my shoulders dropping slightly as the tension shifted into something else, something less sharp, but no less intense. That is why I did not say anything, I admitted. Because once it is real, you cannot ignore it anymore. He nodded slightly, like he understood that, like he had expected it. You thought I would, he said. It was not a question. I met his gaze again, more steadily this time. I did not think you would stay. The words came out more honest than I planned, and I saw it immediately, the way something in his expression shifted, subtle but undeniable. And now, he asked quietly. I hesitated, my thoughts racing again, but differently now, less chaotic, more focused, like everything was narrowing down to this one decision. I do not know, I admitted. It was not the answer he probably wanted, but it was the only honest one I had. He did not push. He did not question it. He just nodded once, like that was enough for now. That is fair, he said. The simplicity of the response threw me off more than anything else. I had expected resistance. Pressure. Something. But not that. You are not going to argue, I said, narrowing my eyes slightly. His lips curved just a little, not quite a smile, but close. You already argued with yourself, he replied. There is no point in me doing it too. I stared at him for a second, caught off guard again, because he was right. I had been arguing with myself since the moment he walked back into my life. So what now? I asked, the question coming out before I could stop it. He glanced briefly at the space between us, then back at me, his gaze steady, grounded. Now, he said slowly, we stop pretending this is something it is not. My chest tightened again, but not in the same way as before. And what is it? I asked quietly. He did not hesitate this time. It is something that already started, he said. You just walked away before it had a chance to become anything. The words hit harder than I expected, because part of me knew they were true. I had left before anything could grow, before anything could be defined, because I was afraid of what it might turn into. And you think it still can? I said. It was not a challenge. It was a question. A real one. His gaze did not waver. I would not be here if I did not. Silence settled between us again, but it felt different now, less like tension, more like something waiting to be understood. I glanced down at the bag on the floor, then back at him, and slowly, I stepped away from the door, just a small movement, but enough to change everything. His eyes followed it immediately, catching the shift, recognizing it for what it was. A choice. Not to run. Not this time. I am not saying I trust you. I added quickly, because that mattered, because I needed that line to stay clear, at least for now. He nodded once. You do not have to. And I am not saying this changes everything overnight. I continued. It does not, he agreed. But it changes something. I let out a slow breath, my chest feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Then we start there, I said quietly. His gaze softened again, just slightly, just enough that I noticed, and this time, I did not look away. We start there, he repeated. And for the first time since all of this began, it did not feel like I was being pulled into something I could not control. It felt like I was stepping into something I had finally chosen. 10. The moment I said we start there, something shifted in the room. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet change that settled into the space between us like it had been waiting for permission to exist. Victor did not move closer, did not reach for me, did not try to close the distance again, and somehow that made it easier to breathe, easier to think. For the first time since he walked back into my life, I did not feel cornered. I felt aware. So what does that actually look like? I asked, crossing my arms loosely, not defensive, just grounding myself in something familiar. He considered that for a moment, his gaze steady but less intense than before, like he was adjusting too. It looks like you not running, he said. I let out a small breath, glancing briefly toward the back door before looking back at him. I am still here. For now, he replied calmly. I nodded once. For now. The words hung there, uncertain but real, and for a second, neither of us spoke. It was not uncomfortable, just new. I shifted my weight slightly, glancing around the shop like I was seeing it differently now, like everything that had felt so stable before had quietly rearranged itself without asking. You cannot stay here all day, I said finally, breaking the silence. His eyebrow lifted slightly. Why not? Because I have a business, I replied, gesturing vaguely around us. And people are going to start wondering why I closed early. He glanced at the front window, then back at me, like he was actually considering that, which felt strange in itself. Then open, he said simply. I blinked. You are still here. And, he said, like that did not automatically answer the problem. I stared at him for a second, then let out a quiet laugh despite myself, shaking my head slightly. You do not see how that might be noticeable. His lips curved again, faint but unmistakable. Then I will be less noticeable. That is not how this works, I said, but there was no real bite to it. He did not respond, just watched me, and something about that made my chest feel lighter and heavier at the same time. I exhaled slowly, then moved toward the front, flipping the sign back to open. The motion felt strange, like I was committing to something I had not fully figured out yet. The bell above the door jingled softly as I unlocked it again, and I stepped back behind the counter, automatically slipping into the routine I knew so well. It should have felt normal. It almost did. Except Victor was still there. He did not take a seat. He did not leave. He just stood near the side wall, far enough that he was not in the way, but close enough that I could feel his presence no matter where I moved. It was distracting, not in the way I expected, not sharp or overwhelming, just constant. You are staring, I said after a minute, not looking up as I adjusted the display case. You noticed, he replied calmly. I huffed out a small breath, finally glancing at him. It is hard not to. His gaze held mine for a second, then softened just slightly. Good. I frowned. Good. It means you are not pretending anymore, he said. The words landed quietly, but they settled deeper than I expected. I looked away first this time, focusing back on the counter even though my thoughts were nowhere near it. The bell rang again, and this time, I did not flinch. A couple stepped inside, talking quietly, completely unaware of the shift that had taken place in this space just minutes ago. I slipped into routine easily, greeting them, taking their order, moving through familiar motions that grounded me in a way nothing else had all morning. But even as I worked, I was aware of him. Not watching me closely anymore, not analyzing, just there. When I handed over their drinks and they left, the quiet returned again, but it did not feel as heavy this time. You are good at this, he said suddenly. I glanced at him, surprised by the comment. It is not complicated. It is, he replied. You just make it look easy. I did not know what to say to that, so I did not respond, just busied myself with wiping down the counter again. After a moment, I felt it, that subtle shift in the air, that quiet awareness that always came before he moved. I looked up just as he stepped closer, not all the way, not invading my space, just enough that the distance between us felt intentional instead of accidental. Are you tired? He asked. The question caught me off guard. What? You look like you have not slept, he clarified. I hesitated, then shrugged slightly. I have been busy. He studied me for a second, like he was deciding whether to push further, but he did not. You should rest, he said instead. I let out a small breath, almost a laugh. That is not exactly an option right now. His gaze flickered briefly to my stomach, then back to my face, and something in his expression shifted again, subtle but undeniable. It should be, he said quietly. The words settled in a way I was not prepared for. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Not as a command. Not as an expectation. Just something he believed. I swallowed, looking away again because it was easier than trying to figure out what that meant. You do not get to decide that, I said, softer this time. No, he agreed. But I can make sure you have the option. I frowned slightly, glancing back at him. What does that mean? He held my gaze, steady, grounded. It means you do not have to do this alone. The words hit differently now. Not sharp. Not overwhelming. Just there. Present. I exhaled slowly, my chest tightening in a way that was not entirely uncomfortable. You keep saying that, I murmured. Because it is true, he replied. Silence settled between us again, but it felt different now. Not tense. Not heavy. Just open. I looked at him, really looked this time, at the way he stood there without taking over the space, without trying to control it, and for the first time, I understood something I had been avoiding since the beginning. He was not trying to take anything from me. He was trying to stay. And that was a completely different kind of problem. 11. It should not have felt this easy to stand in the same room with him. Not after everything, not after months of building distance like it was the only thing keeping me steady. But somehow it was, not easy in a simple way, not comfortable exactly, just manageable in a way I had not expected. That was what unsettled me the most. I was still moving through my routine, still serving customers, still pretending this was just another day. But the difference now was I was not pretending he was not there. And that changed everything. "You are thinking too much again," Victor said quietly from where he stood, his voice low enough that no one else would notice, but clear enough that it cut straight through whatever I was trying to focus on. I glanced up at him, frowning slightly. "You do not get to comment on that." His lips curved faintly. I did not say I was allowed to. I exhaled, shaking my head, but there was no real frustration behind it, not like before. If anything, it felt familiar. That realization hit harder than it should have, and I looked away quickly, focusing on the coffee machine instead. The bell rang again, another customer stepping in, and I slipped back into work mode automatically, greeting them, taking their order, moving through the motions like I had done 1,000 times before. But this time, I was aware of something else too. The way Victor shifted slightly when someone got too close to the counter. The way his eyes tracked movement without being obvious about it. The way he stayed just far enough back that he was not in anyone's space, but still close enough that I could feel him there, steady and constant. It was not control. It was awareness, and I did not know what to do with that. When the shop cleared out again, the quiet returned, but it did not feel empty anymore. It felt shared. "You keep watching the door," he said after a moment. I paused, then realized he was right. I had been glancing at it without even noticing. "Habit," I replied. He tilted his head slightly. "Or expectation." I met his gaze, my chest tightening just a little. "You think I am waiting for someone else?" "No," he said. "I think you are waiting for something to go wrong." The words landed deeper than I expected, and for a second, I did not respond. Because he was right. Again, I let out a slow breath, leaning back against the counter. "Things usually do," I said quietly. He stepped a little closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough that I could feel the shift in the space between us. "Not always," he replied. I glanced at him, a little sharper this time. "You cannot guarantee that." "No," he admitted. "But I can make sure you are not dealing with it alone when it does." My chest tightened again, that same unfamiliar feeling settling in deeper this time. "You keep saying that like it fixes everything." "I am not trying to fix everything," he said. "I am trying to be here." The simplicity of that answer caught me off guard. I looked at him for a second longer than I meant to, trying to figure out if there was something behind it, something more complicated, but there was not. It was just honest. And that was what made it hard to argue with. "You do not belong here," I said finally, gesturing lightly around the shop. "This is not your world." His gaze followed the motion, taking in the small space, the worn counter, the quiet details I had built my life around. "It is yours," he said. "That is enough." I frowned slightly. "That is not how things work." "It is," he replied calmly. "You just decided it was not." I shook my head, pushing off the counter, needing to move, needing to do something with the energy building in my chest. "You make everything sound simple." "It is not simple," he said. "It is just clear." I stopped, turning back toward him. "Clear to you." "Clear to you too," he said, and this time, there was no softness in his voice, just quiet certainty. "You are just not ready to say it yet." My chest tightened, and I looked away again, because he was getting too close to something I was not ready to unpack. "You think you understand everything," I muttered. "No," he said immediately. "I think you do." The words hit harder than anything else he had said, and I froze for a second, my thoughts catching up too slowly to stop the reaction. He saw it. Of course he did. "You already chose not to run," he continued, his voice quieter now. "That means something." I swallowed, my pulse picking up again, not from panic this time, but from something else, something steadier, heavier. "It just means I am not ready to leave yet," I said, but even to me, it sounded like half an answer. "Then what are you ready for?" he asked. The question hung there, simple but impossible to ignore. I opened my mouth, then closed it again, because I did not have a clean answer, not one that made sense, not one that fit into the life I had built here. "I do not know," I admitted finally. He nodded once, like that was enough. "Then we start there." I let out a slow breath, my shoulders dropping just slightly. "You make it sound like this is some kind of plan." "It is not a plan," he said. "It is a direction." I huffed out a quiet breath, shaking my head again. But this time, there was something else mixed in with the frustration. Something lighter. Something that felt dangerously close to trust. The bell rang again, pulling my attention back to the front, another customer stepping in, and I moved automatically to greet them, slipping back into routine again. But this time, it felt different. Not like I was pretending nothing had changed, but like I was learning how to exist in something new. And as I handed over their order, I realized something that made my chest tighten in a completely different way. I was not just adjusting to him being here. I was starting to expect it. And that was the part that scared me the most. 12. By the time the afternoon light started slipping through the front windows, everything felt different in a way I could not undo anymore. Like the air itself had settled into something new, and I had no choice but to adjust to it. I was moving slower now, not because I was tired, but because I was thinking about every step, every decision, every moment that had led me here, standing behind this counter with Victor still in the room, like it was the most natural thing in the world. It should not have been. None of this should have been normal. And yet, somehow, it was starting to feel that way. "You are quiet again," he said, his voice low, not interrupting, just noticing. I glanced up briefly, then back down at the cup I was drying, focusing on the motion to keep my thoughts from spiraling. "I am working," I replied, but there was no edge to it, no real pushback. He did not argue. He just watched, and I felt it, that steady awareness that had shifted from unsettling to something else entirely. Something grounding. That realization made my chest tighten in a way I could not ignore anymore. The bell rang again, another customer stepping in, and I greeted them automatically, slipping into routine again, but this time, I was aware of something new. I was not checking the door out of fear anymore. I was checking it out of expectation. And that difference mattered more than I wanted it to. When the customer left, the quiet returned, softer now, less heavy, like it had settled into something steady instead of something waiting to break. I set the cup down and leaned against the counter, exhaling slowly. "You are still here," I said, more to myself than anything else. "Yes," he replied simply. I looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time, I noticed something I had missed before. He was not just standing there. He had been adjusting too, not taking over the space, not controlling it, just fitting into it in a way that should not have been possible for someone like him. "Why?" I asked quietly, the question coming out before I could stop it. His gaze lifted to meet mine, steady as always. "Why what?" "Why are you staying?" I clarified. "You have what you came for. You know the truth." He held my gaze for a second longer, like he was weighing how to answer that, and for once, I could not read him immediately. "Because knowing is not the same as understanding," he said finally. The answer caught me off guard. "Understanding what?" He did not respond right away. Instead, he stepped a little closer, not enough to close the space completely, just enough that I felt the shift again, that quiet pull that had become impossible to ignore. "You," he said simply. My chest tightened. "You already understand enough." "No," he replied calmly. "I understand what happened. I do not understand why you chose to handle it alone." The words landed deeper than anything else he had said so far, because they went straight to the part one had been avoiding, the part one had not wanted to explain, even to myself. I looked away, my fingers curling slightly against the counter. "I already told you," I said quietly. "I did not think you would stay." "That is not the same thing," he replied. I exhaled slowly, my chest tightening again, but this time, it felt different. Less like pressure. More like something opening that I had kept closed for too long. "I did not want to need you," I admitted, the words coming out softer than I expected, but more honest than anything I had said so far. Silence followed, but it was not empty. It felt understood. When I looked back up, his expression had changed again, subtle but clear, something in his eyes shifting in a way that made my pulse pick up. "You do not," he said. I frowned slightly. "That is not what this feels like. It feels like you are used to doing everything alone," he corrected. "That is different." I shook my head, a small, almost automatic reaction. "It is not different." "It is," he said, his voice steady, but firmer now, like this was something he was not willing to let me dismiss. "Needing someone is not the same as choosing not to push them away." The words hit harder than I expected, and I froze for a second, my thoughts catching up too slowly to stop the reaction. He saw it. Of course he did. "You are still deciding," he added quietly. My chest tightened again. "Deciding what?" "If you are going to keep running," he said, "or if you are going to let something stay." The simplicity of it made it harder to ignore, harder to argue with, because it stripped everything down to exactly what it was. A choice. Again. But this time, it felt different. Not forced. Not pressured. Just there. Waiting. I looked at him for a long moment, my thoughts slower now, more focused, like I was finally seeing something clearly instead of trying to avoid it. And what if I do not know yet? I asked quietly. He did not hesitate. Then you take the time to figure it out. I let out a small breath, my shoulders dropping just slightly. You make it sound easy. It is not easy, he said. But it is simple. I huffed out a quiet breath, shaking my head again. But this time, there was something else mixed in with it. Something that felt less like resistance and more like acceptance. The bell rang again, but I barely noticed this time, my attention still on him, on the space between us, on the shift that had been building since the moment he walked back into my life. And then, without thinking, without planning it, I took a small step forward. Not far. Not enough to close the space completely, but enough to change it. His eyes flickered instantly, catching the movement, recognizing it for what it was. Not a reaction. A choice. And for the first time since all of this started, I did not feel like I was being pulled into something I could not control. I felt like I was stepping into something I was finally ready to face. 13. The moment I stepped closer, even just that small distance, everything settled into place in a way I could not explain, like something that had been out of sync finally aligned, quiet and steady instead of chaotic and overwhelming. Victor did not move right away, did not reach for me, did not close the rest of the space between us, and that mattered more than anything else, because it meant this was not something he was taking, it was something I was choosing. The realization sat heavy in my chest, not uncomfortable, just real. You moved, he said quietly, his voice lower now, like he understood exactly what that step meant. I let out a slow breath, my hands resting lightly against the counter behind me, grounding myself in something familiar even as everything else felt new. I did, I replied, meeting his gaze without looking away this time. His eyes held mine, steady and focused, but there was something else there now, something softer, something that had not been there before. Why, he asked. The question was simple, but it carried weight, not pressure, just curiosity, just wanting to understand. I hesitated for a second, searching for the right words, but nothing complicated came to mind, nothing layered or guarded. Just the truth. Because I am tired of running, I said finally. The words felt lighter the second I said them, like something I had been holding on to for too long had finally been set down. He did not respond immediately, but I saw it, that small shift in his expression, something settling, something easing in a way I had not seen from him before. Good, he said quietly. I let out a small breath, almost a laugh, shaking my head slightly. You say that like it fixes everything. No, he replied. I say it because it changes where we start. The way he said we made my chest tighten again, but not in the same way as before. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just present. I glanced down for a second, my hand instinctively resting against my stomach again, but this time, I did not hide it, did not try to block the movement. It was just there, real. His gaze followed it, but there was no tension in it now, no sharp edge, just something steady and certain. Then say it again, he said softly. I looked back up at him, frowning slightly. I already did. Say it for yourself, he clarified. The words caught me off guard, not because I did not understand, but because I did. I took a slow breath, my thoughts settling into something clearer than they had been all day. I am not running, I said. It sounded simple. It was not. It was everything. The moment the words left my mouth, something shifted again, deeper this time, more grounded, like the choice had fully settled into place. Victor nodded once, like that was enough, like he did not need anything more than that. Then we move forward, he said. I let out a breath, my shoulders dropping just slightly, tension I had not realized I was holding finally easing in a way that felt almost unfamiliar. Forward to what? I asked. He held my gaze, steady, calm. To something we did not finish, he said. My chest tightened, but not from fear. From recognition. Because I knew exactly what he meant. I had left before anything could be defined, before anything could become real, because I was afraid of what it might turn into. And now, standing here, I realized something that changed everything. I was not afraid of that anymore. Not in the same way. And if it is not what you think, I said quietly, then we figure out what it is, he replied without hesitation. The certainty in his voice did not feel like pressure anymore. It felt like something I could lean into instead of push against. I nodded slowly, my thoughts clearer now, more focused. And if I decide it is not something I want, I added, because that still mattered, because I needed to know that line was still there. He did not hesitate. Then you walk away, he said. And I do not stop you. The words hit deeper than anything else he had said, because I knew now he meant them. Not as a test. Not as a tactic. Just truth. I studied him for a second, really looked, and for the first time, I understood something I had missed before. He was not trying to hold me here. He was choosing to stay. And that was different. Completely different. The bell rang again, another customer stepping in, but this time, I did not feel the need to pull away from the moment, did not feel the urgency to break it. I just nodded toward the counter. I still have a shop to run, I said. His lips curved slightly. Then I will stay out of the way. I huffed out a quiet breath, shaking my head, but there was no frustration behind it anymore. You are terrible at staying out of the way. I will learn, he replied. The simplicity of that answer made something in my chest ease again. Like this did not have to be perfect, did not have to be defined all at once. It just had to continue. I turned back to the counter, slipping into routine again, greeting the customer, taking their order, moving through the motions that had once felt like my entire world. But now, it felt different. Not smaller, not threatened, just part of something bigger. When I handed over their drink and they left, I glanced back at Victor without thinking, and this time, it did not feel strange. It felt expected, natural even. You are still here, I said again, but this time, it sounded different. Less like a question, more like a statement. He met my gaze, steady as always. I told you I would be. I nodded slowly, my hand resting lightly against the counter, my thoughts quiet for the first time all day. Yeah, I said softly. You did. Silence settled between us again, but it was not heavy, not tense. Just steady. And as I stood there, looking at him, at the space we had somehow rebuilt from something broken and unfinished, I realized something that changed everything in a way I could not ignore anymore.